with Brownfield, and I am checking out the plots and talking to the experts at MFA at the MFA Training Day here in mid-Missouri. Joining me is MFA Senior Staff Agronomist Scott Wilburn. Scott, thanks for joining us. We're going to talk about sprayer and equipment clean out today, but before we get to that, how was spray season this year across Missouri?
Well, spray season's still going on. Our biggest challenge probably this year has been basically a blessing at the same time. We've had a lot of rain. It's not often in July you're kind of hoping you get a dry spell, and when we have those situations, it makes it challenging to get to fields timely. We preach to growers we want to target weeds that are 3-4 inches tall. And when they're 3 to 4 inches tall and then you get several inches of rain, they don't stay 3-4 inches very often or very long. So that's been probably the biggest challenge, but overall it's been a pretty smooth year.
I'm really glad to hear that. I know Mother Nature, we can't control that, right? But we do the best we can to kind of pivot and go with that. But I know there are always things farmers should be thinking about or applicators whenever they are, spraying the crop.
Right.
And a lot of that's clean out. What are the top 5 issues that you are hearing about with sprayer and equipment clean out?
Well, I guess the biggest thing, the biggest issue you run into, we have a lot of products that are good products if they're used the right way. So for example, if you have a product that it needs to be applied to the soil, if that product accidentally is applied over the top of a crop, maybe even a crop it's intended for, it can damage the crop. So we have to make sure we get everything cleaned out of the machines.
So what are we focusing on here about sprayer clean out?
Every machine has its different nuances and different little idiosyncrasies, so it's hard to stand in front of a group and say how do you clean this machine out just perfectly. That's where we deal with our manufacturers, equipment manufacturers. We deal with the guys that have been in the business longer, those kind of things. What I've chose to focus on are really the top 5 things that I see on a regular basis. Those would be, we see a lot of issues with just getting booms flushed out. And when I say a lot of issues, I cover 30 some odd stores, and I don't know how many thousand acres we treat. And I don't, for the number of acres we treat and the number of phone calls I get, it's minuscule. But we want to try to get it as close to 0 as possible. But of the things I see issues with booms not flushed out. As our machines get larger and larger, booms can hold 25-30 gallons of fluid. And that's several acres worth of fluid to flush out. So if you don't get all that out and you take off across the field, you'll have a little bit of leftover chemical. So we want to focus on that. We want to focus on tank cleaners, both tank cleaners that we intend to put in the tank to help clean things out, and then chemicals that work as tank cleaners and pull old residue out when we're not expecting it. So we want to cover that. We're going to cover places on machines where crop protection products can hide. That may be valves, that may be filter system. Lots of machines have little places, end caps on our booms, dead ends on booms. Going to focus on that because that's something that's really universal across machines. We want to focus on hard to remove products. There are some products that are just a little more difficult than others.
Like what?
Well, we've got some great products that we use as pre-emergent weed control in soybeans, but they can be a little difficult to sometimes get out, and if you have just a little bit of residue, you'll see it in the crop when you go over the top of another crop. So we want to focus on those because those are products we need, and we need to just make sure we're using them correctly. And then the last thing we're going to cover, we talk all the time about cleaning out our application equipment, but what can be just as important is the equipment that brings the product to the machines. A lot of times the issue is not a machine, it's the nurse trucks and trailers that can have a contamination issue. So we want to put extra focus on those as well.
Well, Scott, thanks for joining us. Thank you all for joining us. Once again, I've been visiting with Scott Wilburn with MFA. I'm Kara Hart for Brownfield.